Making sure we were set up. Dan and Joe Stewart worked with Richard to get his things in the order they needed to be gotten into. I want to recognize David Perrone. David is also a person who served his childhood here at the Ohio Masonic Home, and he's a resident down in the square. But today we have with us Richard Snow. And for your information, I put on the advertisement, he's a KYCH. And for those of you who don't know what that is, that's a Knight of the York Cross of Honor, and in my book, that's a Distinguished Mason. Richard is a member of the Ohio Masonic Lodge of Research. And what this is a group of guys that are interested in history. They research Masonic issues, write papers, and make presentations. So about a month or 6 weeks ago, we asked Richard if he would come share with us this afternoon, and he has kindly consented. So I would give you Richard Snow, KYCH, child at the Ohio Masonic Home, and presently a resident.
A couple of weeks ago, I was talking with one of the ladies, and we got on the subject of interurban, and I told her I would talk a little bit about the interurban, and so somebody's got to get this thing squared away, or I'm
hold on to it.
And so that's what they call an interurban car, and they went between cities and so forth. I'll talk a little bit more about that a little later. All right. Come on. I'm pressing the button.
Hey, Dave's here. Come on,
I'm pressing the button.
Come on, Dave.
Did you turn it off?
Dave.
I don't know what I did.
That didn't do better.
Here we are.
Okay, that picture was taken the day that I came here, September the 5th, 1937. That's my mother, my brother Jim, and myself as a little kid there. This is a picture of the Masonic home when I got here. These are. Can people hear me? Because I can talk pretty good.
Richard, they won't hear you. Richard, they won't hear you.
Well, unfortunately, somehow in the process, the picture is a lot lighter than I envisioned it to be. But up here is Rickley, and right here here's Rickley right here. I can see the columns. Then right here is the Eastern Star Building, and I'll talk about that a little bit later. And here's the castle. Right here is the Senior Girls Building. Here's the Cunningham, and this is the Junior Building, Junior Boys Building. Route 40 is here, and the interurban ran alongside Route 40. It came up to the powerhouse, which is about right in here, right in here, right in front of the Senior Girls Building. It's along the road that you don't use anymore that goes out to Route 40 because they got it blocked. I guess there was an accident there.
Yeah.
And so the whole campus was formed by the Mad River on the east side, the Mad River on the south side, the Mad River on the southwest and west, and then the Lower Valley Pike on the north, on the west and the northwest, and then Route 40 on the north. And it comprised about 365 acres when I was here. Down here is the Hillman Building. Route 68 now runs through that direction. And I can see part of it. This is the road that came into, in order to get to the Hillman Building, you had to get on Route 40, come down, and then get on the building toward the Hillman Building. And then this road here goes to tenant houses of farmers that worked at the home. I think there were 3 houses there. This is the arch. If you take the road where the Grand Lodge building is, or that 2-story house, and follow that road as it goes north, if you go right straight to Route 40, that went under this arch. That arch was dedicated the month that I came here in September. It was built by the Ohio Grottos Association. They sponsored that and had that arch built. So obviously it's not there anymore. This is my first Christmas. How I know, I'm leaning on a toy locomotive that I brought here from the home. The lady here is Miss Carrie R. Lyons. She was a lady that took care of the junior boys. And I have a couple of pictures, I think, during my presentation. This was taken on the 2nd floor of the Cunningham building on the west end of it. No, south end of it. And in this picture, you're actually looking east. And so every Christmas, we boys and girls got presents from Masons all over Ohio. This is the Wrigley building. This is obviously taken during the winter time. This is where the York-Wright building is now constructed. This originally was the hospital. And when they built the Wrigley Hospital, then this became the girls' dormitory. And then later, when Cunningham and the senior girl building and the junior boys building was constructed, it became what we called the Eastern Star building. There were couples and then single women or single men lived in this building. I believe they ate their dinner in the dining room in the hospital. In talking a little bit about Wrigley, there were both ambulatory and bedridden residents that lived in it. So those who were ambulatory ate their dinner or their meals down in the dining room of the hospital, which is now a storage area, I guess, what you'd call it. In the hospital. This is part of the playground. I wanted to show somebody where the girls that when they were going to get the bus to go someplace or otherwise, they came out this exit, and there was one on the other side. And the sidewalk here went straight to the castle, where the buses stopped and picked us up and took us to school and so forth. This is part of the playground, and this is Donald Brett. I understood he became a surgeon after he left the home. And this is Jerry, who died of cancer not too many years ago. I took his picture down to his widow a number of years ago. Well, unfortunately, you can't see it. But up on the very top was a huge star that shone every Christmas time. You could see it for miles. That star was probably maybe 8 foot tall and about 8 foot wide. It's unfortunate that these slides turn out to be so light, because on my computer at home, they're not this light. Here's Cunningham. When I got my smallpox, I was placed there away from the rest of the kids. I don't know why. And this was all screened. Now it's enclosed. And this was a dining area. This was where kids were housed, girls, And this was the kitchen. This was where adult employees were housed. This is the junior boys building. It's not there anymore. It would be where this building is now. It used to be the senior girls building. Directly north in an open area was this building. And it had two departments. One, I don't know, we were separated by ages. And so this was the older boys, teenage boys, and this was the younger teenage boys. Yeah. This is the Hillman building. The boys were housed up here, and then down here was the dining room. The rooms were constructed in cherry, really beautiful cherry wood. And up on the upper floors was where we had band rehearsals. Many of the boys learned to play instruments. I learned to play 3 of them while I was here. When the child residents became down around the 40s, we were moved down here, and this area in here was all enclosed. It wasn't open anymore. That was where we boys were housed. That was our bedrooms and so forth. Okay, here's David Perrin right here.
Oh, David, you're cute.
And that's me up there. That's Mrs. Lyons. These two boys are not twins, they're brothers. This is Donald Griffin and Clinton Griffin. This boy and this kid were brothers. This boy became potentate of the Dayton Shrine, Bob Hancock. This is actually David, but what I wanted to show, this was the front entrance of our building, of our Cunningham building. We didn't call it the Cunningham building, we called it the Children's Building. And this is junior girls. This is Wilma Walton. She had an older brother and sister. This is Doris Albertson. Her brother became Grand Commander of the Grand Commander of Ohio. And I think that's it. That's all I remember. This girl became my girlfriend.
Marjorie,
Here's a picture of the senior girls. And this is on the east side of the building. What I explained to you earlier was the west side. But, you know, they never used it. They never came out. When they wanted to associate with us, they went out the other exit. This is Mrs. Timberlake's department. My brother, Jim, is right there. Obviously was taken during Christmas. Mrs. Timberlake was a widow of an IOOF Mason, and when she retired at the IOOF home, and when the band went on one of its last concerts, we went there to play a concert, and I saw her sitting on the bench, and after the concert I went over and talked with her, and the first thing out of her mouth was, "How is Jimmy?" That's what she always called my brother Jim. This is the nursing staff. We had quite a hospital at that time. There was, in fact, we kids, when we got sick and so forth, we went there, and I'll explain that a little bit later. Yeah, and this is the boys' ward of the hospital. when you leave here and you go to the Rickley building, right when you get in there, off to the right, you'll see double doors that goes into the auditorium. Well, that was a corridor that went down to the medical facilities, the dentist, the x-ray machine. They had a small operating room, and then that peered off into two avenues. One was a boys' hospital section, and the other one was a girls' hospital section. There were minor operations that occurred while we were here. Major things that went into City Hospital in town, or to Miami Valley Hospital. This is the boys' band. This is my brother Jim. I was too young I was probably learning to play the trumpet when that picture was taken. And these boys traveled, this band traveled all over the state during many of the York Rite. When the Grand Chapter, Grand Council, and Grand Commandery met at different cities, the boys went there and they participated in parades and so forth. This bass drum has quite a history. When there was no more music being played here, and many of the instruments were sold, I don't know what happened to the bass drum, but somehow or another, one of the employees here was visiting in Michigan, and he saw this 3 or 4 people playing on the street side, and saw that bass drum. And she called whomever it was here at the Masonic Home about that bass drum being up there. So they made arrangements to buy it. And so that bass drum right now is in the museum. While I was here, I learned to play the trumpet, the clarinet, and the oboe. Nobody learned to play the oboe because I found it up in the music room, up in one of the cupboards. And I asked Dad Haynes, what is that? He said, it was an oboe. I said, did anybody ever play it? No. So I learned to play that. It was what they call the military fingering system, which today people use the oboe, use what they call a conservatory system, and that's what I have in my apartment. I learned to play that oboe, and in my senior year of high school, I played the oboe in a concert band, and I played the trumpet in the marching band. And our band director was by the name of Botsford. He's a Mason.
Bill Botsford.
And he knew that I could play the trumpet pretty well, and I could play the oboe. So he had me play the trumpet in the marching band, and I played the oboe in the concert band. And I used that oboe. When I left her, I took it with me. And I played in a couple of concert bands in Columbus. I played in what they called the Columbus Civic Symphony Orchestra, which was a forerunner of what is currently now the Columbus Symphony. And then when I enlisted in the Marine Corps, when I came back, I didn't play it anymore. I wasn't playing the oboe anymore until I worked at North American, and I bought my own oboe and started playing with them. We also had an orchestra here. And this is me. These 2 girls are sisters. She is still living. This is Dad Haynes, and this is Burley Cartmill, who was the CEO or the superintendent at the time. We were playing in the 1st Masonic District. I forget what temple we were in, and it was a Grand Master's reception, I believe. I'm not sure. But it was a moneymaker, and this was a whole mess of money. Dollar bills and so forth right in front of us. So somebody from that district wanted us behind the table with that money, so we posed for them. This is another good-looking redhead that I liked to do. Claire Baumgartner. And this is Wilma Walton. She had a couple of boyfriends here. This is the tower that's no longer there, obviously, it was changed. That has a unique experience. There were few of the boys that climbed the tower and had good times. I never climbed it, although some people seem to think that I did, but I never climbed that tower. I was a good boy. But it had a 6-foot chain link fence around it, and it was located west of the castle, and maybe 50 feet south of it. It was out there all by itself. This is part of the playground. There was a playground on both sides. One for us small people, and on the other side was for the junior people. And it was quite a playground. And here, this picture is actually backwards, because this merry-go-round is actually in front of it. So but this is the only picture I found, and so I made one of. Here's a teeter-totters. They're over on this side, and there was a big buckeye tree hit, and we used that a lot. There was a great big sandbox, which in this picture would be toward me, but actually it's on the other side. And in the picture, that as a young kid, we used to play, build our own little castles and so forth. When Price was our superintendent, in the summertime, he would come out while we kids were in the sandbox, and he would bury pennies. And we would search for them. And I write that in that book that's over there in the library. You'll read that, where I indicate where Ed Price used to bury pennies in the sandbox. This is part of the girls' dormitory. I just wanted to show you the beds and how they were placed close to one another. This picture was taken during a Halloween festival. We would usually have parties and so forth at the scout cabin. Now, when I first came here, they had a Boy Scout troop here. I think it was Troop 23. And it was, I don't know what happened shortly after, because I remember they directed traffic when the arch was being dedicated by the Grottos Association. But we used to have a lot of parties down at this scout cabin. I don't know where I am in that picture. And this is part of the younger boys' dormitory. This is me stretching my arm. And I write in the book a chair at the foot of each bed. When I first come here, it was quite a traumatic experience for me. First of all, being in a strange place, and secondly, a lot of kids around, poking fun at me and doing what kids do. But it all smoothed out a little later on. I wanted to point out the floors. They were cork floors, both in every room in the Cunningham building. So I don't know what they have there now. And we had prayer before we went to bed. This is just part of, I don't know, I'm standing around here someplace, but these kids are kneeling around. This is Mary Carey Alliance, and you can see the sheets over the bed. We're about ready to go to bed. And here again, the cork floors. When I first came here, it was very highly regimented. We walked in twos, we didn't talk, and we didn't carry on, and discipline was very strict. But you got to remember, this was the 20s, 30s, and 40s, and that was a way of taking care of people, parents taking care of their kids and so forth. We're on our way over to Ripley for some entertainment. These steps here are going up to the Eastern Star Building. Oh, here it is.
The star.
There's the star. It's unfortunate it doesn't show up as well, but that star could be seen for years or for miles on a clear winter night. And this is the scout cabin. Where it is placed would be west of the, if you recall where the garages are, that goes out to the driveway that you can't go out anymore, those garages. It was located due west of that. We had 3 teams of Belgian draft horses. There was King and Queen, Tom and Jerry, Barney, and Charlie. I don't know who the others. But we bailed, and we also had loose hay. So there's the kids. Now, I'm not up in there. I can't remember who those kids were. And that's one of the tenant farmers. The senior girls cooked their own meals. Of course, they were taught by the lady who was overcharged of them, but they cooked their own meals. Who cooked our meals? We had a cook. The primary girls, the primary boys, and the intermediate boys all ate in the dining room. I think I show that a little later. That's me on the far left. And this is part of the dining room of the part of the building west of the castle. Has been different. Every 4th of July, we had races. And these races were conducted about where the Grand Lodge building is, the house is. And here we are standing up ready to do something. I don't know what it is. I don't remember where I am. This looks like Tommy Strong, but I don't remember where I am in that line, but I'm there someplace. And this is Pop Bancroft. He and his wife were in charge of the senior boys. Here's Charlie Schaefer. He was a secretary. Pop Bancroft was the treasurer of the home, and Charlie Schaefer was the secretary. Now, Pop had charge of the senior boys, and Charlie Schaefer lived right across the street, and he came to work every day. Our barber, Dylan, by the name of Dylan, also lived across the street, right next door to Charlie Schaefer. I don't know who that other man is. This picture was taken in 1942. This is me with the cockhead. This is my brother Jim up there. And David Perrin is right here. And this is Carl Stow, and this is his brother Neil. That was the number of boys and girls we had at that time in 1942. That's our choir. When I first came here, the matrons, we called them the women who took care of us, we called them matrons, and the men were patrons if it was a married couple. We had Sunday school in the morning. In the afternoon, we marched to the auditorium to the auditorium for church services. And then the ministers came from all over the area to do their service on Sunday afternoon. When Price died, Burley Cartmill became our CEO or superintendent, and things changed. We then went to the Covenant Presbyterian Church for Sunday school. In the afternoon, we still went over to the Brickley Auditorium for church services. And we had a choir. This is me. Don't I look adorable? And I'm trying to find out. I don't see. No, the Miller girls weren't here yet. But we had quite a crowd, a choir, as you can see. This lady was our organist. She was a resident adult here, and this was our choir director, who was hired strictly for that, and that's our uniform. The next picture shows us. This picture was taken about 48 or 49, just before I left. So that's how, and the numbers on there indicate the people and who they are. And this is me right back here. So that's not all the kids, that's just the kids that were in the choir. We had a football team here. In those years, there was what they call a six-man football team.
Yeah.
This man here, Jim McDonald, was the coach, but he also became the coach of Springfield High School
Yeah.
when I went there in 1947 through 1950. I don't know who this man is. I can't identify any of these boys. Now, we had a baseball team, and this is my brother Jim, and I didn't learn that he was on the baseball team until, maybe 15 years ago, when I found this picture, and Lauren Baumgartner was the guy that named everybody, and this man, Stewart, also became a coach at Springfield High School.
Jim Stewart.
And we had a pretty good ball team. I played on it when I got a little older. And these were the people that had charge of us. This is E. Dave Price. I think this is Dad Haynes, and I think this is Charlie Shaper. This is Dad Haynes' wife. This is Mrs. Timberlake. She was an adorable lady. This is Cook, who had the junior girls. This is Mrs. Prather, who had the senior girls. I can't remember who that is. I don't think it's his wife. Here's Charlie Bancroft. And this is a from alumni homecoming. Initially, in 1947, we actually organized it as a nonprofit body in 1947. And we had it in our bylaws that we would meet every 3 years. Well, then as we started dying off, we started to meet every 2 years. And then it came down to 1 year. And last September, there were only 3 of us here. I believe I have 22 surviving alumni in my database. But, some of them are, out in California, and they're my age. They're in their high 80s, early 90s, and so it just makes it difficult for them to come. But there were 3 of us last September. And the second picture was just the alumni. Well, in this picture, you can see there are some kids here. So, and I don't know where I am. My brother's not in this because he only came to one reunion, and that was, I don't know, maybe a couple years before he died. But I wanted to show that to you, that we had quite a number of people. When the alumni met in 1947, a lot of us went down to the Hillman building and really cleaned up the baseball field and spruce things up. We had the bandstand, which was southwest of the castle. We spruced that up. We had a band concert, and of course those things kind of went away as we died off and no more music. And so that's the end of my presentation. I've got a book over here of pictures that you can, if you want to, take the time and go through them. And anybody have any questions? Yes.
Do you remember the Brown kids? Brown, June, and Jim?
Yeah. Well, there were 3.
Three of them.
June,
yes.
Jim, and Frank.
Frank. Okay. Yeah.
Frank, and when World War II was over, he came here to work, and he lived in the castle in a very top building.
Yeah.
And we kids used to watch him take a walk around on the sidewalks, but he committed suicide.
Oh, well, June and I graduated together in Springfield High School in 1940.
Then you knew her husband, West?
No, I didn't know her husband.
No.
Was
They They had 2, 3 kids. She married a man by the name of West, and he always came with June at the homecomings. I had, a number of years ago, I wrote to her, but I never received anything from her. I don't know if she died or what happened.
Yeah, I understand, according to her one brother, she moved to West Virginia, and I don't know where, but Jim was quite the athlete.
Yes.
He was a cross-field runner and what all he done, but they both, did you go to Snyder Park Junior High School?
Yes, I did.
Was McCoy still the
Yes, he was still a principal.
He was still there?
He was still a principal.
Okay.
Yeah. Any other questions? Yes.
When was the last, how long did the orphanage last? And when was the last year that they?
Okay, good question. The first child came aboard in 1896. And I used to know the maximum number in the 1934 or 35 was the maximum number of kids that were here. When I came here, there were about 170. And when I left, there were, I don't know, I think the number strikes me as 36 when I left in 1950. Any other questions? Yes, sir. Yes,
I was
ma'am.
looking at a book when I first came to work at a castle. It showed a picture on the basement of the castle. Can you hear me?
Yeah.
Basement of the castle, the pillars. There's a book around here somewhere showing when it was built and how it was built.
I didn't quite understand what you was,
The castle,
what about the castle?
When it was built.
when it.
Well, the castle started construction in 1890, and the cornerstone was laid in 1892. In 1992, there was a celebration for 100th anniversary of the Cornerstone Land. And Norman Lincoln and myself were asked by the CEO to write a paper on our experiences here. And Norman wrote, his title of his paper was My 4 Years at the Masonic Home, and my paper was called Our Greatest Charity, the Ohio Masonic Home, which is listed in the in that book in the hospital. I want to mention about the tunnel. Every Saturday morning, we were given the chore of sweeping and swabbing that tunnel from the hospital all the way to the junior boys building. It was about a little over a quarter mile long. And in the senior girls building, there was a huge drop in elevation. And to push that four-wheeler bucket up that hill was quite a chore for 2 little kids. But we made it. We did that. It was part of our chores. And another thing I'd like to mention, we were never forced to do anything, even work, except some chores like that or cutting the grass. We weren't forced to do anything. We had a print shop here in the basement of the Cunningham building where kids would learn to go the printing trade. And it was called a vocational school of printing. And in those years, your dues cards and all the Masonic stuff that went all over the state of Ohio was printed there. Later on, the presses were moved down to the Hillman building in what they called was a barn, and the printing was done there. I was going to say something else about that. Oh, well, David Perrin apparently told a nice story that we would get on the roller skates and we'd go from one end to the other, knocking down all the old people we could knock down. But we did roller skate a lot in that tunnel. It was really a lot of fun. It was really a lot. We had several hills we had to go up and go down, and it was a scream. I want to mention about the swimming pool. In the junior boys building, there was a swimming pool in the basement, and in the senior girls building, there was a swimming pool in the basement. The senior girls pool was a lot better. First of all, you had a lot of light to come in, so we used to sneak over there and swim in the girls. And when the girls were swimming there, if Prather was coming down the steps, the girls would tell us, and so we hide in the lockers. And when she left, then we continued swimming. We used to sneak over there a lot, go swimming in that pool. See, our pool was kind of dingy. Not much light. It was real cold, and not as big. It wasn't one that's fancy either, because the building was built much later. So that's where we used to sneak over there and do a lot of swimming. Anything else? Yes, sir.
What kind of animals did you guys have animals? Cattle or dogs?
Well, Dad and Missy Haynes had dogs. We found a beagle, and we kind of adopted the dog, but it stayed with Dad Haynes. Incidentally, I wanted to mention to you, I talked about Dad and Pop Bancroft. These are euphemisms of names that these people carried. Mom and Pop Bancroft were over the senior boys building, and in my writing of this book, I write that they were the gem of adulthood, taking care of kids. And then Mrs. Prather, a widow, who had the senior girls building, I mentioned about she was a very haughty type of lady, very acted and sophisticated, wore a lot of beads, and we were scared of her. Dad and Missy Haynes, Dad major project employment was for the music part of it, but he took over the discipline problems. Missy Haynes did, and we called him Dad and Missy Haynes from the time I came here to the time I left. Mrs. Bell wasn't here very long after I left, and we kids were really scared the hell out of us. She had a Boston Terrier puppy, and she had a whip, and my brother got whipped by her, and in fact, he ran away a couple of times while he was here, but my brother Tom brought him back. And she wasn't here very long. I don't remember so much about the woman who took care of the primary girls, but later on, Mrs. Cook became their guardian, and she was mean as hell. but Mrs. Lyons, who took care of the junior boys, she was a gem. I mean, she washed my mouth out a couple of times, but she was really a very, very compassionate lady. And when I learned that she passed away, I went to Yellow Springs to be her pallbearer and help bury the woman that took care of me when I was a snot-nosed kid when I first came. Yes, sir.
I remember listening to you, well, I've heard you do this today. I went to a school for the blind down in Columbus. In fact, I went to two schools for the blind. One was on Main Street, Parsons, and the other was on North High. And some of the situations you talk about, I can relate to immediately. Just thought I'd let you know.
I met a lady who taught at the blind school. Her name was, last name was Christ. Now, she probably was there after you left because she was not quite my age, and she lived not too far from us, but she taught at the blind school. Don, do you remember her name?
I don't remember.
It wasn't Mary. What was it? Because we used to pick her up and take her to our High 12 meeting in Columbus. Yes, sir. Yes, ma'am.
What chores did you have and at what ages?
What's that?
What chores?
Well, I mentioned sweeping and swabbing the tunnel. I volunteered to work on the farm and did some milking, stripped the cows for them, helped bale the hay. I don't know what David did. If he did anything, he did it after I left.
Polished his roller skates.
What's that?
He polished his roller skates.
Oh, that could be. Yes, in the back.
You have a question. So, in one of my walks on the hillside, it looked like there was a pond or a fishing area or something at one time. Was there a pond that you guys could fish in?
No.
No, okay. It just, I wonder what this.
There were three, where the Masonic Square is, there were three pastures. The upper pasture was a section north of where the railroad trestle crosses the gorge and up to Route 40. The middle pasture was that section just north of the railroad trestle and went around to the southeast. And the lower pasture was beyond that. And we never let the cattle go in the lower pasture. The river wasn't very deep in that area, so the farmers wouldn't let them do that. Once in a while, I was up early in the morning to help bring the cattle up for milking, but not very often. Mostly, they had a couple of farmers. One was a tenant farmer that lived on the property, and one lived across this, Route 40. So I didn't have to do, I wasn't forced to do that. And I wasn't forced to work on the farm. I volunteered to do that. That was something that we wanted to do, to drive the tractors, help bale and hay. I tell this story to my wife and some other person. One time, when you got through milking, then you clean up the dairy barn. And of course, there's a lot of manure, and you put that on the wagon, and you took it out the back and you dumped it. Well, when the manure filled up so far, then we put it in a wagon, regular. I forget what you call it, where when you hit the lever and it automatically throws the manure out the back. Well, we got smart one day. We had draft horses pulling the wagon, and so we had the horses going at a gallop, and the crap was just going on. And my back, I was just full of manure. And so we had to find a way to get cleaned up before we went to dinner that night. So I don't remember where we showered, where we cleaned up or whatever. But apparently nobody smelled us as we sat at the dinner. And speaking of that, I wanted to bring out about the time when I first came here, how we went to dinner. Probably about 5 minutes before the hour that we would go to the dinner, a large bell would ring, and we would assemble out in the hall in twos, no talking. Then another loud bell would ring, and we would march down. Primary boys were the first ones. Primary girls followed us. We would march down and we'd go through the dining area. And I thought I would show it, a good picture of the dining room, but it didn't show up here, it was too light. And we would go to our chairs, went to the same chair every meal. The junior boys were the last ones to come, and they ate up in the southeast corner of the dining room. We stood behind our chairs, no talking. Then there would be a small bell ring, and we would all bow our heads and recite the blessing that I recite to this very day of Masonic dinner meetings that I go to. I recite that same blessing. And that blessing is in a frame down in the tunnel toward Cunningham. And I still do that. Still remember that those 3 times each day, at every mealtime, we would recite that blessing. Any other questions?
Yes. Is the museum going to reopen ever so that everybody could go over there?
Well, I understand you have to call ahead of time to go to the museum.
Who do you call?
What?
Who do you call?
Grand Lodge.
Okay.
You have to call Grand Lodge.
That would be interesting.
There's a man by the name of Eichenshire from Columbus that supposedly takes care of that. Incidentally, when I came, I think it was right before COVID, a woman that I found out who was the widow of Evan Evans, who played the flute and piccolo, she gave me his instruments, which he borrowed from the home, and I had that military fingering oboe. So I took those 3 instruments and gave them to the Grand Lodge to put in the museum. I don't know if they're there or not, but I brought them back. Any other questions? Yes, ma'am.
How long were you here?
I was here from September the 5th, 1937, till I graduated from high school, June the 8th, 1950. Oh, one other thing, somebody asked me, what was the youngest age any child that came here? And David Perrin and I were talking about that, and we came to the conclusion that one of the Carney kids was 2.5. Is that right?
I think so.
I don't remember Carney's first name, but he was 2.5 years old. You were what, 3, weren't you?
I was 3 when I came.
David Perrin was 3 years when he came. I was 5. The oldest couldn't be more than 15 years old. Any other questions? Well, thanks very much. It was a pleasure talking with you. Once in a while we can get together and chew the fat.